it was a great time to take an offensive lineman, but they didn't.
Right.
And this is where I keep going back to this pick. Cameron Latu in round 3. The Niners have an abysmal track record of drafting in round 3. Jair Brown, great pick. Jake Moody, I get it. Now I feel like this is the Kyle Shanahan pick, and this is the one we need to scrutinize because there's a lot to like about Cameron Latu, but it looks like he might have been a little bit of a reach. From everything I'm seeing, people project him to go in round 5. So first of all, what do you know about Cameron Latu, and what do you like about Cameron Latu? Because I know you know a lot about him.
Yeah. So I'm a Bama guy, and I know a lot about Cameron. Cameron is, I think he's a California kid out of Utah, played his high school ball in Utah. He's an identical twin. Gregarious, personal side, he's gonna be a great interview, right?
Yep.
You got another guy. But let's talk about football. Mm-hmm. His ball skills are on par with anybody that we have at the tight end position. And you know who's at the tight end position.
Dwelly.
All right. Yeah. But he has elite ball skills, and he has the temperament to actually pull it off. One thing, he doesn't have top end speed, so he's not a 4.7 guy, but he's very quick. He's very savvy. He runs a lot of the routes throughout the entire route tree, and also he's a very good blocker. He has a lot of effort. He has good hands, and he can move. So he can be detached. He can be an inline blocker. He can be out, and he does a lot of tight end screens, a lot of gadget stuff. He's used to having the ball in his hands. And one thing that I like about him is that he's one of those fun-loving football players. He really loves the game. You see him having a good time when he plays the game. So another thing that you're going to get from him is having him on the field is that he is one of those sneaky ill will intended players. He'll catch somebody sleeping, and he'll be on the field with George, and they're going to have to worry about both of them, right? Because he's going to want to make his mark as well. Cameron is that type of player. So he was a converted linebacker. He requested to be a tight end on a team like Alabama with 3 5-stars in front of him and still made his way. As a matter of fact, he got a 5-star transfer, Jaleel Billingsley, who transferred out to Texas because Cameron Latu took his spot. So
you see what I'm saying about the coach? He really knows these players. I'm like, let me see what the coach is like. He's like a scout. Anyway, sorry. I didn't need to do that. Keep going.
He really is a ball player. Also, I think that he would just fit in with what we do because Alabama stole a lot from the 49ers. They if you look at it, let's just go by the track. Kyle went to Atlanta. Then who came after Kyle? Steve Sarkisian. Sarkisian went and basically had an awakening with that offense. Then Sark leaves Atlanta, has his little cup of coffee in USC, and then he's in Alabama. So the offense that Alabama basically is running, the shell of what they do is the 49ers. I mean, the run concepts, all of their beaters. So I like what he does. He did fight injuries, which is why he would only be a 49ers draft pick. So he fought some injuries later in the season, but he finished later in his junior season, but he finished this year very admirably. So I like the pick. I think that it upgrades our tight end room because having one tight end for what we do, because we run the ball so much, having one tight end is basically playing with one hand behind our backs. I really like the Latu pick.
Let me express my concerns because I liked it at first, and the more I think about it, the more I'm concerned about it. I feel like he is going to be an excellent number 2 tight end right away. Like, he's exactly what the Niners are looking for. He's an upgrade over Tyler Kroft and Ross Dwell. He's going to, for all the things you just said, really good run blocker, has the right mentality.
Big kid. He's 6'5".
Big kid. Yeah, I mean, and like you look at his receiving production in college for a guy who wants to be a blocker like Kittle, his production was almost identical to Kittle's. So I think what Kyle and the team is trying to sell is like, this guy could be our starting tight end down the line, not just a backup tight end, but like he doesn't have 3rd round production, and he doesn't have 3rd round traits either. Like Kittle killed the combine 4.5 off the charts. Latu isn't like that. He runs about a 4.8. So is he really going to be a starting tight end down the line, or did you just draft a number 2 tight end right here? A couple rounds too early with right tackles on the board. I mean, this was the spot if you want to take a right tackle. Blake Freeland was available, and DeJuan Jones was available, and there's someone that Carter Warren. The Jets took him in round 4. There were a few OTs that went in round 4. You didn't take any of them, and you ended up taking 2 tight ends. And we'll talk about Braden Willis later, but athletically, I know they're different players, but athletically, they're kind of similar. And I wouldn't be surprised if Braden Willis ends up having just as good of a career as Latu. So they doubled up a tight end. They got no offensive tackles. This was a spot. They got Burford in round 4 last year. He was a day 1 starter, even if the offensive tackle wouldn't have been a day 1 starter. I mean, offensive linemen take time. Like Aaron Banks was a second round pick. He took time. It might have been nice to take some guy and just start developing him there. But that's my question with this pick.
Okay, so let me push back.
Okay.
Number one, he got picked for, if you want to talk about where he got picked and what we could have done outside of them. If you're drafting an offensive lineman that early, they have to start. They have to start. All right. You can't draft a project at that position in the draft. I'm sorry. Like what Cameron Latu is going to get on.
Banks didn't start. Banks didn't start.
I'm glad you walked into that, which leads me to my next point. If you can't have him starting, what happens is that you have to replace him and sit the guy who you need to play right away. So that's what happened to Banks. Banks came in. We drafted Banks in the 2nd round. We had all intents and purposes of playing him. That was a setback by not having him on the field, right? And for where we are on our team, we needed to raise the floor of our tight end room with 1 pick. And we did that. I feel like bringing in, and not only a number 2 tight end, because by title it's a number 2 tight end, but essentially it's just another starter for what we do. He's going to get on the field. He's going to play. For sure. He's going to play 30 to 40 snaps, 30 40.
All right, let me try one more argument here. Let me try one more argument because you're killing me. Okay. I don't think you should be drafting offensive linemen based on who can play first right away. Because when you do that, you know who you end up with? Mike McGlinchey. Mm-hmm. Because people are going to say, all right, well they're going to take an offensive lineman next year and he'll start right away. That's what they did with Mike McGlinchey. They took a guy in the round, in top 10, the 9th pick, perfect fit for their scheme, everything they wanted. Took him ahead of Colton Miller, who needed a little bit of time. Mike McGlinchey ended up being a huge disappointment for them. Colton Miller's a much better player, but they took him because he could play right away. Like, I feel like offensive linemen are kind of like quarterbacks in that they take a little time. And if you're not committed to maybe putting them on the bench or going through some growing pains, then you're not going to get good ones.
Well, the devil is in the details, right? And our team needs players that can contribute right away. And if you're going to contribute right away as a starter on this team, you better be a damn good player to start, okay? And at that time, and then also the draft is contextual, bro. Offensive linemen in that position of the draft at that time were not starters, in my opinion. So what are we going to do? Draft a known backup for a position that we know has to start? I mean, look what we were asking questions about having Burford having Spencer rotate in and out at guard.
Yeah.
How many times? So are we going to do that again at tackle? So, and with what veteran that we have to supplant that? So I feel like we solved a real problem with drafting Cameron, right? That was a real issue. George starts slow. He's notorious for starting slow, right? George misses games. And when George misses games, there is a huge drop-off in our tight end room with production and blocking. Who's the guy that missed the block that essentially ended our season?
Tyler Kroft.
Tyler Kroft. We need more talent at the position.
I know. I just feel like the fact that it's a 3rd round pick, they didn't let Kyle pick the safety. That wasn't him. They didn't let him pick the kicker. That was like we have to go to the dentist. So this is his pick. And I don't trust him drafting. And then the scouting staff at the end took another tight end, which makes me feel like they agree with me. Like, hey, that was their guy. And they're like, okay, we'll give you Latu, but we're going to take a tight end too, and we're going to roll them out. Because they're so similar. Like they don't really complement each other. Athletically, they're like the same guy.
I don't think they're the same guy athletically, but I see what you're saying.
I mean, okay. I mean, not as football players, but just how they move a little bit. Like, I guess how they tested is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I could see the scouting staff being like, all right, man, this guy tests. I mean, he put up Braden Willis put up 20 reps on the bench. Latu put up 14. I could just see Adams Peters being like, all right, Kyle, let's see what you got. I'm going to go you against me. Let's see who's better at this, me or you.
All right.
Anyway,
all right.
I'm looking because look. I'm with you, but if you have a really good coach in Chris Forster, he's been the offensive line coach for 2 years. Since he's been the offensive line coach, you gave him Banks, Brendel, and Burford, and he's done some good stuff with them. Like, give him something good. And like, I thought this was the spot. Once you got past round 4, I think I'd never heard of the offensive tackles anymore. And then I think you're better off just waiting until UDFA's, because they did get some. We're going to talk about them.
Well, if we're going 7, because this is year 7 of the regime, right?
Yeah.
So each draft isn't a one of one, right? Everything is succinct. They all matter.
Yeah.
So if everything matters, you yourself are talking about traits, trends of whose pick is whose and what we usually get out of what rounds.
Yeah.
Last year, Forrester got picks. Hey, Chris, you got your picks. Last year, we spent picks on guys. So this year, you see what I'm saying?
Make it work with Nick Zakel, buddy. Make it work. All right, fair enough.